their
Right.
names.
Or something. So I was like, I don't want to look like a jerk.
No.
Okay. For the live stream, I'm going to go ahead and hit record just on this end, just so we have a backup recording.
Okay.
And then, okay. I'm going to go ahead and hit record just on this end, just so we have so I'm going to turn down my volume on YouTube so I don't hear everybody. And anybody who's joining in us, welcome to Self-Care for Caregivers. My name is Rebecca Mills Anderson. I am the Clinical Director of Integrative Health Coaching Services, if you don't know me already. If you are over on YouTube right now watching this live, we apologize that we weren't able to broadcast this live in the Facebook group as promised, because there were some technical difficulties between Zoom and Facebook. It's not working basically. So we decided to go live in YouTube today. And I'm here with Jill Armijo, who is also a health coach. But as we're going to explain, Jill and I are very different in what we do for a living, even though we have the same title. So for those who aren't familiar with me, I am Clinical Director of Integrative Health Coaching Services. I am a functional medicine coach who helps people create nutrition and lifestyle changes that help them take care of their chronic conditions. I specialize in thyroid, autoimmune, neurological, and environmental illnesses like chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So Jill, welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Do you mind introducing yourself and telling everyone a little bit about what you do that makes you unique?
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Thanks so much for letting me come on and have a conversation with you. I just love Rebecca. I just want to start out with that. She is so thoughtful and so interesting to listen to and so fun to work with. And so I'm really grateful that I could be here. And so my name is Jill Armijo, as Rebecca said, and I'm a health coach. And I combine my health coaching practice with a life coaching focus, because I learned right away that when I was working with people, it is so much a process of looking at what we're thinking in order to be able to follow through on what we know we should do. So everybody knows, or they get instructions on what they should do. And it's just the implementation is just really tough sometimes. So I focus on helping people get aligned with what they want to do by helping them to see their brain.
Awesome. So I want to tell people before we get started, I want to make sure that everyone knows that they're in the right place, that this talk is for you. So one of the reasons I wanted to get together with Jill is because she, in my program, I focus a lot more on the biochemical, you know, like, are your adrenals okay? What can you do for your thyroid? That kind of stuff. And even though we do a whole session on self-care, Jill really focuses on self-care as like its own journey. Am I correct about that, Jill?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. And so we really wanted to kind of put our heads together and kind of open up the conversation for people who do need to dig a little bit deeper in here. And we also want to make it very clear who this talk is for. This talk is for when we say caregiver, we mean anybody who cares for any other human. This could be someone who has, yes, of course, it's caring for a loved one who has Alzheimer's or a disability, Parkinson's, what have you. But it also involves the mother of the small children, or children who need care, or someone who works for a living and is a caregiver. They're a nurse, a counselor, a health coach, anybody who cares for another human being. Teachers, our teachers. If you're a teacher, this talk is for you. Anybody who spends the majority of their day caring for another human being or human beings. As a teacher, I want you to know that you're in the right place. These are the professions and the roadblocks, such as having small children, having a loved one we care for, that keep people from being able to take care of themselves. And I cannot tell you, I always say that people need to know, and Jill, I think you'll agree with this. If people would really have really good self-care, we would teach it to our children and allow people to have self-care in our grown-up culture, meaning like give them the time and space and ability and access to do that, they would put us and many doctors out of a job. Would you, I mean, do you think that that's even like absurd, Jill, or do you think that that's probably pretty powerful?
I think that's really powerful. And I also think that we wouldn't put anybody out of a job, because I have a coach and my coach has a coach. And we are all here in this life to support each other, and in whatever way we can do, in whatever lane we're in. So as Rebecca already said, she's in a completely different lane than I am. We focus on different things, but we all really just want to help everyone to feel better and to function better. And so I know what you're saying, Rebecca, and they would have a different job. Instead of putting Band-Aids or whatever, yeah, they would have a job of actually helping us in our wellness journey.
Absolutely. We'd be focusing on something completely different rather than just trying to get you started or right. Dealing with huge thyroid issues. Instead, we'd be like, how do you reach your next goal? Yeah, right. It would definitely look different. I'd have to find a new job at least. Yeah. Okay. So awesome. So Jill, can you tell us a little bit about what we'll be covering? Also, just a quick outline of some things that we're going to be talking about today. So people, I just want to reinforce that this definitely is, this is for everybody, really.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what kinds of problems caregivers develop during their caregiving journey. And we'll also be talking about what compassion fatigue is. You've probably heard that term, or if you haven't, you probably have an idea of, just from the name of it, what it means. And it probably means something different than what you're thinking. And then we're going to talk about how to not only avoid compassion fatigue, but most people, before they realize they need some help, they're already deeply into lack of self-care. We're going to talk about how to figure out what your needs are. A big part of the reason people fail with self-care is that they've been working so hard to help someone else that they've just, doused their own interests and things and needs, and then they criticize themselves for not doing everything, and so they kind of go into hiding from themselves, and they really don't want to see who they are because they aren't sure they even like themselves anymore. And so we have a lot of caregivers out there who really don't even know what their needs are to address those needs. And so we're going to talk about how to figure out who you are and what you need.
Awesome. I think that's going to be a good thing. Some of the things that I heard out there that I think are going to be really helpful is, number one, how to figure out what you need. I think a lot of people have the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Yeah.
Well, I would have done this if, I could have done this if, I should have done this, but that's not necessarily what they actually need to do today.
Right.
And I think that's going to be really eye-opening for somebody watching this. So I'm really excited to jump in. Before we get started a little bit, for those who are watching the replay, especially on YouTube, I would love for you guys to go over and join my Facebook group. It is at facebook.com/groups /integrative health coaching services. That's how you can get there, or you can find integrative health coaching services on Facebook, our business page, and message us. We have an auto response that automatically gives you a link to the group. And in that group, we are always looking for people to interview, to bring in their expertise, people like Jill, who could come in and kind of add value to the group. We also do what we call Free Coaching Fridays, which is once a month. We give people an opportunity to ask questions, pick my brain, and just kind of get some leadership. Sometimes that turns into a full webinar. So just for them, and people in the group have a opportunity to request what they want covered or how they want to be served. So if you are looking for some support, then that is a great place. And also another place, if you think after this talk that Jill is the best person and you really want to connect with her, Jill, can you please tell them how they can connect with you on Facebook or wherever you'd like to connect, so that they can kind of get to know you a little bit better?
Sure. You can find me on Facebook. There's a page that's just jillarmijo.com. And then my group is, and let me spell my last name. It's ARM, like your arm, and then IJO, and it's just Jill, like Jack and Jill went up the hill. So jillarmijo.com on Facebook, or my website is also jillarmijo.com. Trying to keep it simple. And then my group is Caregivers Leading Abundant Lives.
Awesome. Awesome. So you guys can find some really good stuff on there. Learn more about us. Feel free to Facebook stalk us. We love it when you do that, because that's how you get to know us. And then when you're ready to reach out, we'll be here to support you in whatever way we can. Okay, so I'm ready to jump in, Jill. Are you ready for?
I'm ready.
Oh, meat and potatoes time. So the first thing, I know we talked a little bit, I kind of defined caregiver, but I would really like to see if you have a different definition, or if there's somebody I forgot when I was saying who this was for. Can you kind of just give us a brief definition of caregiver, just to make sure we're very clear?
I think you covered it really well. However, there is one more little group of people that I'd like to include, and that's people who are caring very deeply for something in their life, maybe that isn't another human, like their PhD study, or their or their collection of tarantulas that they're raising, or whatever it is. If you have something that you care deeply about and you're neglecting your self-care because, number one, maybe you feel like it takes too much of your time, or you feel like it's got you overwhelmed. Maybe you're starting a business and you're focusing so much on starting your business that you have forgotten to take yourself to go play tennis or whatever it is that you love to do with your time. Yeah. So those people too, even if you're not taking care of another human, if you're neglecting your own needs because of something that's very special to you, then you might be in this category.
That resonated with me so big, because I definitely, when I was building my business, cut my self-care short and then later had to go make up for it.
Yeah.
So I love that you put that in there, because that just really, like she's talking to me. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. So what are some things, now I always refer to this as kind of like pouring from an empty cup. You're giving so much energy to X or Y, and you're not giving enough energy to feed yourself. Like, you're not being fed physically or emotionally or spiritually or whatever that self-care looks like. How does this seem to manifest? Like, how do you see it when you work with people? What are some of the ways that it has manifested in their life, or caused discomfort in any way?
Well, I for 30 years, I've been a physical therapist assistant. And so I have met hundreds and hundreds of caregivers, many of whom became my patient in my rehab setting or in my outpatient setting, whatever setting I was in, because they neglected themselves. And so in a nursing home, sometimes we would have two people in one room that were husband and wife, because whoever was the caregiver fell apart and we needed to help them take care of their person. So I've met many, many caregivers, and the first thing that happens with caregivers that I've seen in that setting, because of my job as a physical therapy person, is that they have neglected to nourish their mind and body and spirit.
Yeah.
And they've kind of focused on the wrong things. So they focus on, don't do this and don't do that, and maybe I should be doing this and I should be doing that. But they have left their favorite things out of their list of important things to do. And we all know what we like to do to nourish ourselves physically and nutritionally and intellectually and spiritually. We all have things that we love to do, and those go bye-bye a lot of times when someone is focusing on caregiving, on caring for someone. And another thing that happens is that caregivers feel like they should do everything right. So I have one example. I have a friend who was preparing dinner one night for her grandpa, and her grandpa got up from the table, which he's not supposed to get up by himself, but he did, and she had her back turned and didn't see him. He got up from the table, forgot his cane, and fell down and broke his hip. So she talked to me and she said, I should have been right there. And I said, really? If you were right there, who was going to fix dinner? And she was like, oh, well, I had to be fixing dinner, but I should have been watching him. Really? Well, if you were watching him, then what would have happened to your sauce or whatever it was? So we place unrealistic expectations on ourselves. And if something happens to our loved one or our thing that we're really devoted to, and we blame ourselves, that is not helpful at all. Like, we just have to have compassion for everything that happened or didn't happen, and just realize we can only be in one place at one time.
Absolutely. And that could just as easily have happened with a newly walking toddler who stands up in their high chair.
Yes.
And what I'm also really seeing there is not just the woulda, shoulda, couldas, but the self-talk of the pressure she's putting on herself and criticizing.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think that would really, I don't think most people would see that and say, oh, look at that self-talk. But you asking those questions like, really? That really tells me, oh, I do that, you know. And I think that's interesting to me to really see that conversation in a new light. So good questions, good high mileage questions, as we call them in the coaching world.
And I'm sorry, but I didn't finish answering your question. I think your question was what kinds of things happen to caregivers. And so that was one thing. And so caregivers often have problems with their heart. Like, that's the first thing. Like, a lot of people just have a heart attack. But heart disease is huge, partly because of malnourishment and overeating, which is where I was, not with the heart disease, but I had gained weight and got all arthritic, and that kind of woke me up. But most people that are in a caregiving situation don't get enough exercise, and they do eat too much, lots of emotional eating. And then some other big ones are the depression and anxiety. So the mood disorders and the anxiety. Anxiety isn't officially a mood disorder, but depression is. And then lack of sleep. People get really poor sleep. Again, that can be coached. People think they don't have enough time to sleep, but they really do. They just have to figure out how to get it in. And so just so many things like that.
One of the things that really stood out to me there is, and I don't know if you learned this in school or not, but we talked about in school, they talked about how, you know, disease would happen all in one area of the body, and that had to do with emotional root causes. And
regional.
Right. And I think that it's so interesting. A predominant amount of heart disease, because these are people who their heart is hurting on an emotional, mental level, and then it ends up hurting on a physical level. And I think that's really like, whoa, they're not taking care of their heart literally in more than one way, right? That almost put tears in my eyes, I'm not gonna lie. Something you said also reminded me of like these things that, you know, we talk about pregnancy triggering disease, but it's not just the pregnancy, it's also just the having a small child afterwards. And it just reminded me a lot, some of the things that you were saying, the parallels between what you're seeing, because like what I'm seeing, I don't see as much heart disease as much, but I see a lot of thyroid, hormonal disorders, and the I hate the word excuses, reasons, objections, excuses, whatever you want to call them, is I don't have the time, and I don't have the, you know, and I can't. But, and you talked about the support system, like when she was, I should have been right there. And having that support system, that person to come in and take care of that person or thing that you're giving your care to kind of relieve you. And that support system is such a make it or break it to allow you just that time to take care of yourself, whether it be journaling, meditating, exercising, whatever. If you don't have that kind of there, then it does, I think there's a lot of conflict. I mean, like they feel pulled, you know, shouldas and have-tos. I guess it was a long way to get there, but I got there.
Yeah, I used to call it my urgent things or my important things. And I was constantly having a battle between, okay, is this important or is it urgent or is it both or is it neither? And a lot of times the important and the urgent things kind of were in my brain important or urgent. But then when I really thought about it, if I was in the hospital and everybody was on their own without mom, what would really be important and what would be urgent and what wouldn't? What would be okay to let slide? It's very interesting.
Like, can they make dinner alone, or can I take 20 minutes there? Could we have something less elaborate?
Cereal.
Exactly.
I can't tell you how many times we had cereal for breakfast when my kids were little.
We call it fend for yourself night.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't mean we're eating healthy, but we're having like my husband's having like tuna fish instead of baked piccata or whatever it is. Awesome. So definitely, I think it's interesting that you've seen heart disease. I'm seeing thyroid and more endocrine, but also the stress. What I'm also seeing is, when it comes down to it, the root cause of all these things is that when you get stressed out and you're not taking care of yourself, your detox pathways shut off. So you can't get rid of things that you normally could get rid of that would contribute to heart disease or thyroid or hormonal disorders or neurological disorders, because you're, so I think that's almost, even though we're seeing different things, the root is still take care of yourself, right?
The stress.
Awesome.
For sure.
So let's talk a little bit about, I want to define self-care, because I have a lot of questions when I do my one appointment where we really hash out self-care. I've had some crazy questions. One, I worked with some teenagers, and one of them's like, can I just play video games? And, and we have to have a really discussion about, like, when is a video game helpful to your health and when is it not helping you reach your goals? Like, there's a difference between I need 30 minutes to chill and rest and recoup, and I need to do this so that I can get physically stronger. Like, what I mean?
Right. I know exactly what you mean.
Absolutely. So let's define that.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're defining the difference between self-care and buffering from our emotions.
Wow.
Or whatever we really want to. A lot of things that we're tempted to do and call it self-care is really actually just getting more into the ditch of not self-care.
Like,
so
couch potato.
Yeah, if we back up and look at what we want to do for our bodies, and what we do in the spur of the moment because we're tired and we haven't set aside intentional self-care plans, then we often buffer. And buffering is what I call, is my term for partaking in something that gives us a quick dopamine hit, whether it's shopping, whether it's gossiping, whether it's reading a book or playing music, or there's a lot of good things that can be buffering. Of course, there's horrible things too, like gambling or overeating or alcohol and drugs. Those kinds of things are, obviously not good things to do when we're stressed and we need a dopamine hit. But there's a lot of things, like my kids, all three of my kids, when they were stressed out, which happened a lot because my husband and I were constantly at it, and they were our caregivers. But my kids turned to their guitars. Every single one of them would go in their room and pick up their guitar instead of going to the gym or doing their homework or, helping mom in the kitchen or whatever. Their buffer.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like they're doing it. It's not like becoming a couch potato, but if you're developing, because you're thinking, oh, that's great, they're developing a skill. But like you said, they're doing that instead of.
Yeah, if we buffer with anything, whatever it is. And so playing the guitar is a wonderful thing, but you need to be intentional about when you're going to play the guitar and when you're going to take care of other things. And being intentional is the whole crux behind when self-care will work and when we're just buffering. So being intentional means that ahead of time, whether it's once a week or every night before you go to bed, we plan what we're going to do for ourselves, for our self-care, and we stick to it. And that is really hard. And so when I coach people, a lot of people, especially early on before I got into a lot more of the life coaching part, but people would come to me for weight loss. And what I found out is that it's really tempting for people to, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
We're talking about setting intentions for self-care.
Yes. Yes, it's really tempting for people when they're going on a weight loss journey to get this really strict diet. I'm going to totally do this because I've lost weight before that way. And I'm going to just do this really strict thing. And so the next day they do it, and maybe 2 or 3 days goes by and maybe they're really good. Maybe the first day goes by and they can't do it. Maybe they do it for 2 weeks and then they're like totally done. So it's tempting to do that though, because we're being mean to ourselves, because we're being judgmental of ourselves. We hate our body. We think if we are harsh and strict with ourselves, then we'll do it better. But you cannot hate yourself well. You cannot hate yourself thin. You need to love yourself. And so when you first start intentionalizing your day, when you start living intentionally, you make a plan for yourself that's very typical of what you normally do anyway. So if you like to buffer with video games, make a time in your day that you're going to play video games and stick to that time and play video games for that entire hour or whatever. And if you like macaroni and cheese, make macaroni and cheese, put it on your plan. It's on your plan, it's intentional. So you want to put all kinds of things in your day that you love to do that are not hard for you to do. And for 15 days, you want to follow your plan. And it's an easy plan. And after those 15 days, you've got a little bit of accountability to yourself. You've learned that you can trust yourself to follow through with your plan. And that's when you start very gradually introducing more healthy foods, or introducing some exercise, or maybe weaning yourself off of some shopping or something that you think you're overdoing or is not what you want to be doing with your time.
Or getting you your goals or what have you. Awesome. And I love that, because I think that it not only teaches you that you can follow through and like have a plan and that a plan can work for you, but I also love that it's you know, I think sometimes we exercise because we're trying to punish ourselves for that cookie. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And that is like, that's no, it's like, how can I love myself? And you're preaching to the choir when I say you cannot hate yourself into wellness. You're like, that is, you have to love yourself into wellness. And that is absolutely, you cannot view this as an I have to and I hate it. You have to view this as an I get to and I want to and I want to be able to, and all of those positive thoughts. I think that's just so powerful. And love that. I love that, just like slowly making those little changes, because we don't become from 0 to 10 overnight. It's just not how it works. No. Okay, so I want to do a little bit, let's see. We've defined self-care of what it is and what it is not. So it doesn't mean like getting rid of video games. It means setting intentions around them. Like if I say I'm only going to do, 10 minutes of video games as a break in between things, then I'm sticking with that. It doesn't mean like depriving yourself. That's what I'm hearing, of the things that you love or things that give you joy or whatever comfort. One example I'm going to use that's to kind of demonstrate that for people is like when I don't feel good or I'm tired or depleted, my intention is to sit on the couch, drink green tea or some equivalent warm drink, and watch too much TV. Like that's my go-to would be too much TV. And it's okay to watch some TV and drink a warm cup, but to do it all day does not align with my goals. Right. So allowing myself that comfort of 30 minutes. But I think that also one of the things that I would recommend people is to ask themselves, what am I getting from this? And if the answer is this comforts me and I need comfort right now, great, get the comfort. But let's also think of some other ways that would comfort me, that would also get me to my goals, so that I get both, not either or, not deprivation. Can you think of any other like questions or stuff like that while they're figuring out where they want to go? Anything else that you would like them to reflect on or think about to help them with that change?
Yeah, just back to the loving yourself. I want to touch on positive affirmations and counting your blessings.
I love
So as a result of not caring for myself very well for way too long, I was having lots of problems, and I was very depressed, and I didn't realize it yet. So I wasn't on a happy pill. I was crying every day. I was, really in a bad place. And every time I tried to count my blessings or say affirmations, it made me more discouraged because I started judging myself for having so much to be thankful for and still being sad or still being depressed. And so what I'd like to say about that is that sometimes we have to allow ourselves to be sad or to be frustrated or to be tired or to be jealous or judgmental or any of those other emotions. Like, we're humans and we need to give ourselves the space and the allowance to have those emotions when those emotions come up because of whatever situation. On my walk today with my tennis buddy, after we play tennis, we go for this long hairy walk. And she told me that she has not had a really good relationship with one of her daughters, and her daughter lives in Tennessee or somewhere a long ways away from us. And that she really wants to have a relationship with her daughter, but her daughter, for whatever reason, doesn't want to have anything to do with her right now. And so she decided that she is feeling jealous because her in-laws have a relationship with them. And she said, so at the end of our walk, she summarized by saying, well, I just need to stop being jealous and prideful. And I just pointed out to her, I said, you just really need to not judge yourself. And she needs to be coached. I didn't go into it a lot, but we really need to just be our own best friend, get our own back, treat ourselves as though we would treat our best friend, which is so challenging. But if your best friend was having a struggle like that, you wouldn't criticize them and say, oh, you've just got to get over it. You would help them and comfort them and say, of course you feel that way. So we need to treat ourselves like we would treat our best friend and really look at how we're talking to ourselves.
Yeah, and you said something that really reminded me of something. I think that one of the things that I run into is that when we're analyzing foods that don't work for people, it's like, if I want to heal my gut and I love wine, those things are not matching, and like you said, you might start off by setting an intention around wine, you know what I mean? And then slowly making the changes to align with your goals, and so that you aren't feeling this deprived. But while you're making those changes, there's an emotional process that gets you ready for the next step. And just like that, I think that so many of us have the thought process. I think our culture does this, where if you have an emotion, you're supposed to fix it. Like, emotions are not things to be fixed, they're things to be felt and worked through so that you can get to the next part. I think people don't realize that when we're depressed or we're angry, a lot of times that's, for lack of a better word or more general term, I think of that as like a mourning process. And you can't mourn and get to acceptance if you don't go through the sadness and the bargaining and the anger or jealousy or whatever. You can't get there. It's never going to happen. You only way there is through. And I think that whether it be starting, like what people forget is this isn't just about what I put on my plate. This journey is so much about here and here. This is where the real work is. And that just really resonated to me, what you said. I think people need permission to just be mad, be pissed, be sad, be jealous, and say, okay, what am I going to do with that jealousy? How am I going to work to that next stage? Right? Yeah, that was powerful to me. So thank you, Joe. Wow, good stuff, great stuff. Okay, so I'm going to, we talked about one of the things that, like, we just for people who don't know, there was some things that, some notes that Jill and I kind of brainstormed to kind of organize this for everybody. And I think that one of the things that we talk about, the emotions need to come before the action, meaning I start with the intention so I can still have my mac and cheese, right? And then in order to get to the point where, let's say mac and cheese is not working for me. Let's say I have a food sensitivity to mac and cheese, right? The emotional part has to come before the next step, right? Can sometimes the action help with the emotion? I'll give you an example of what I mean. Sometimes we're taught that, like, for example, if I hate my body and I may not feel like taking care of it yet. So one theory would say, work on the emotion, learn to love yourself, then you'll want to take care of your body. Another person would say, taking care of your body will help you love it. How do we reconcile those two thoughts, Jill?
Well, they have to cooperate with each other. And like you said a little bit ago, you can't do it all in one day. So you do a little bit and the other stuff follows, and then you do the other stuff, and it's the opposite of a vicious cycle. It's a happy cycle if you're growing towards who you want to be. And we need to have a growth mindset as we go through our things, and be sure we don't label ourselves as lazy or irresponsible or any of those things that sometimes we label ourselves as. And we just get into this mindset that we're just this way, and that's why we're having these problems. So we do need to realize that we aren't stuck in any way that we are. Yes, maybe throughout our lives we've practiced our behaviors in certain ways, but we can always change. We can always change. And as soon as we realize and own and admit that we can change for the better, then we can decide what we want to do and make those changes. And like you said, we have to do a little bit of thought work. We have to do a lot of thought work, but we do the thought work. It creates some emotions, and then we do some things. And in the meantime, we're doing things that are creating thoughts and emotions. And one good example is of that cycle is that when I was going through the worst of my stuff with my husband, and going to work every morning and wondering if he was going to be okay, and wondering if the kids were going to be okay, and having a lot of emotional turmoil, I would get to work and I would just all of a sudden realize, oh my gosh, I've got to cheer up and greet my first patient. And so I would plaster a smile on my face. And it's interesting because you think the smile makes you happy, because smiles do make you happy, because when you smile, it creates gets some neurotransmitters, that's the word I was looking for, going, and it creates a little bit of happiness in you. Just smiling creates happiness. But the thing is, if you go back a little ways further, I made that smile because I really wanted to serve my clients in the best way, my patients. I really love my patients and I love my job and I really want to do a good job. So I was smiling with love. I wasn't just smiling through only anger and pity and frustration and whatever I was going through that morning. There's lots of emotions in our bodies creating all kinds of chemical vibrations all the time. So find those thoughts that create the emotions to get started. And then as you start to do the things, then they definitely create a lot more good thoughts and good emotions that help you to go in that same direction. That's how it is with exercise. Like anybody who's a runner or anybody who's really, really faithful into their exercise, they can tell you that sometimes it's hard to get started, but once you get started, you just really want to do that. It creates that desire, creates that thought that if I don't go run, I'm just gonna, not do that great today.
I have it every morning. If I don't walk, I'm not going to have my energy today. I'm not going to have a good day. I do it not because I love walking. I do it because I want to have a good day.
Yeah.
and it really reminded me of something you just said about the smile. It reminded me, I've been in the South and the North, and the cultures are a little bit different. And in the South, we have a saying called "fake it till you make it," and it means put on that smile, honey, and, until you feel good. Yeah. And in the North, they hear that and they're like, "Well, I don't want to be fake," and now I just realized that us putting on that, we're not trying to be fake. We're saying, I want to feel good, so I'm going to do, and so that I can feel good. And so I can make it, that's what we mean by make it. So I love that you said that, because I feel like that explained fake it till you make it better than I ever could. That makes any sense. Okay, awesome. So I'm so glad we did that. I think that's such a good, I think also the action step, if I was to kind of tell somebody, oh, here's what I want you to do, like be more, like to be specific, I'd say, start with what you're willing to do. Like, on that little thing. So let's take somebody who hates their body and they don't want to eat healthy because they hate their body or whatever. You start with whatever part is where you can start, whether it be starting up here or on the plate, like whichever one. There is no right or wrong answer. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just the baby steps that we take in taking care of ourselves. Just, you wouldn't believe what a baby step can really end up creating for you in your life. Just one quick example. I had a patient one time who was on 5 or 6 liters of oxygen. She was close to end stages of COPD, but of course the doctor, wanted her to have physical therapy. And so her experience with physical therapy in the past had been, I go to the gym, I feel like I'm going to die. I go back, and for the rest of the day, I'm completely a mess. I feel horrible. I can't breathe. I can't eat. I'm sick to my stomach. I have panic attacks. So that was her previous experience with physical therapy. And of course, if you're COPD and you can't catch a breath, it's like if you're exercising really hard and you go from nose breathing to mouth breathing to panting to, and then you eventually have to stop because you're just dying. Well, that's like somebody with COPD. That's how they feel all the time. Like they have just exercised to their limit and they can't breathe anymore. So if you can just imagine how that feels, I brought her to the gym, and for 3 weeks, all we did was worked on breathing. And
I love it.
Of course, with Medicare and insurances and stuff, I had to justify it, because you can't just write on the note, did 55 minutes worth of breathing with my patient. You have to justify it. And so I would have her concentrate on her toes and wiggle her toes, or, pet my dog. I had a therapy dog, and I'd bring the dog and let her pet my dog. And we just did many, many things during the course, but every 5 minutes we would stop and see where she was at with her breathing. And we created such a pleasant experience for her with her therapy that she was eventually able to do a lot more than she had in years. And she was able to get better enough that she could go home and be independent, which for her was huge, without all the pain of having somebody just drive her to the ground every day. And so we have to do that with our bodies. We really need to back off and give ourselves the time to love ourselves. Give yourself a foot massage or just something that will feel good, and call that your exercise for today. If you hate exercise, then
dance around the kitchen.
Dance around the kitchen. Do something fun that just feels good to you, and make it be part of your intentions. And then eventually you will find yourself craving the activity, craving that time that you can be having some fun.
Yes, because you're hitting, and you're really hitting 2 birds with 1 stone, because you're pursuing joy, which is so important to wellness, is stress relief, etc. It's so good for everything. And then you're also getting the physical exercise, which is doing 100 other things, right? So I love that. So I'm going to switch gears for just a second. I want to talk about things like excuses, reasons, objections. What are some of the things, and I call them stories. They're stories we tell ourselves, because even when we think they're true, doesn't mean that they are true, because we have the tendency to do like always or never thinking, or all or nothing thinking, like I don't have time. What are some of the other objections, reasons, excuses, stories, whatever you want to call them, that keep people pouring from an empty cup? I mean, this is our tough love moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sorry, I keep muting myself because my son is in the background and he had to be in the background. But anyway, so yes, that is such a good question. I think one of the main ones that I hear is, I don't know how. And I don't know how is so funny to me, because of course you don't know how. That's because you haven't done it yet. Does a baby know how to walk before he does it? No, nobody knows how until you try a few times and things fail, and then your brain rewires because it notices what didn't work, and eventually you find what works. So I don't know how is a huge one. And there's a few more. One is I have tried that before and it didn't work. And
I hear that too. Yeah.
That's a huge one. And this happens because of course people try things before, and the I didn't work sounds really, it didn't work sounds so true. Like you said, they just sound so true. Like,
I would believe if I said it.
Yeah, I tried to, do this thing and it didn't work. Well, it didn't maybe take you to your end goal, but it worked to show you either something that didn't work, or it worked to show you one step. Now the next part of making it work is to take the next step, or to learn from what didn't work and try something else. And so that's a big one. It didn't work the first time. And that keeps a lot of people from reaching their goals.
And I also want to speak to that one from my perspective, because we do a lot of teaching and directing and hands-on to make sure everyone gets it right, because we're working on very specific goals that have very specific, steps to get there. I also find that when, like, I had somebody tell me, oh, I was doing this protocol, and then I look at her food diary and I'm like, no, you're not. So you really don't know if it works. You know what I mean? Like, and so making sure you're doing it correctly, I think it is also some of that stuff, because these things that we use, lots of things, there's like, let's take diet as a great example. There's 100 of them out there. And most of the ones that are out there, most of the people doing them are doing them wrong. And so, and that same thing could happen for the baby who's walking. You can't walk, if you don't pick up your feet. Right.
And so that, I'm glad you said that, because that leads me to another thing. Doing it wrong. A lot of people, the roadblock they put up for themselves is that they don't have enough help. And this is huge for caregivers, because caregivers think they don't have enough help, because people they thought were supposed to help, such as siblings or best friends, they have become uncomfortable, or they don't know what to do, and they think that those people have become scarce, that they don't care, that they don't have any common sense, or they're not responsible, or whatever. So they label all those people, and they haven't even really given those people a fair enough chance, because those people didn't really know what to do. The caregiver is the expert, and the caregiver needs to teach other people what to do. Caregivers always are expecting other people to know what they need. And if they don't do it, then they don't care. And that is so much baloney.
And I find that with mothers of small children, dad does it different, so therefore he does it wrong. When some things he might be doing wrong, okay? You can't put a diaper on a head, right? But there's other things where you just do different, and it's not right or wrong. Do you find that in like the more parallel situations? Obviously that happens with small children, and obviously, come on, they need to be safe. But do you find that also happens with caregivers? We have a specific way of doing things, and we're like, oh, they're gonna mess it up if I take an hour off, or that would be something I would say. I'm going to be honest,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So many caregivers think, well, I can't take a week off because nobody knows how to do it like I do.
No, they
don't.
And
if they would step back and just realize that hospice care, another family member, maybe if there is no family member, you can always take your loved one to a nursing home locally or even out of town and get excellent care. Having said excellent care, I've worked in those settings, and there are so many cutbacks with Medicare, and they don't get excellent care anywhere actually, but they get the best care that money can buy. And they will be safe, and you can go back and you will be safer because you've taken the time for yourself. You cannot just decide that nobody's going to do it right and expect yourself to survive. Other people need to be entrusted to do it wrong, and it's going to be okay anyway. Like, even if other people do it wrong.
Right. If they're physically safe and fed and not emotionally scarred, it's a good day. I mean, like, you know, that's the mom's goals, right? And I think that's parallel to caring for anybody. They're safe, they're not emotionally scarred, and they've had food today. Woohoo! And they pooped. Yeah, we're all happy, right?
Yeah, and that can go with teachers too. Teachers have so much on their plate, and sometimes they just need to take a break and don't do a lesson plan for the next day. Maybe just let the kids review some stuff. Maybe just let the kids do something different, like clear the desks aside and do some tumbling, or, you know, do something different. Teachers, I know they have their requirements that they have to do, their, what are they called? Their core requirements that they have to abide by. But their students need a break once in a while too. And if the teacher needs a break and she's not giving herself a break, then she's, or he is going to be more impatient, more messed up, and eventually, you know, grading those papers just is going to, you know, be too much, and they're going to have to take 2 weeks of sick pay. And so my sister has to take a break once in a while, and she just calls it her mental health day, and she gets a sub, and everything's going to be fine. And when she comes back, yes, there's a big pile of things to do, but she had a day and it was great.
And that's what substitute teachers are for. I subbed a lot before I went back to school, and, you know, I was always prepared. Like, I always had a game in my purse, you know what I mean? Just in case. And everyone got a break. I had fun, they had fun, the teacher had a nice day off, she came back and it was ready to rumble, ready to go, and, you know, let's get that done. And nobody died, it was good. So one of the things that you had mentioned to me in a previous conversation was that essential self-care takes focus, attention, and creativity, but it doesn't take time. Could you explain that a little bit for other people? Because I think that's a loaded sentence, don't you think?
Yes, and I would love to explain that. So my version of self-care is mostly the intentional part. So it doesn't require that we take hours and hours of, so let me back up just a little bit. Most caregiving gurus that say do self-care, they recommend things like meditation and writing in your journal and exercise and prepare healthy meals and do all the things. And those are all fabulous things to do, but self-care doesn't have to look like doing lots of things. Self-care can be just as simple as giving yourself the benefit of the doubt when you have to make a tough decision. And that's huge. And self-care can just look like being your own best friend and treating yourself nice when things go wrong instead of berating yourself. Self-care, the best self-care always starts with noticing the things in your brain that are creating the emotions that you don't want, and being compassionate with yourself for having those thoughts in your brain, but also being willing to try to change those thoughts in your brain. So most of us, like Rebecca said earlier on, we go around telling ourselves all kinds of opinions and beliefs and thoughts that are not fact. So if I, just an example, if I wake up in the morning and it says it's 13 below outside, that is a circumstance. My thought that it's cold is a thought. It's not a fact. To most people, 13 below sounds really, really cold.
It is.
To somebody who's really working out their sled dogs and it's 13 below, maybe those dogs are getting hot after 50 miles of running, and maybe they wish it was 20. So maybe to them, it's not cold. So it's all a matter of, and 13 below is really cold for skiing, in my opinion, but I have skied when it was below that, and I got hot and took off some stuff, and they had to take me to the first aid station because I got some frostbite. But so it's all subjective. And so if you give yourself the thought, oh, it's so cold, then you might snuggle back into your bed and not get up when your alarm clock rang because it just feels so cold. Or you could wake up and think the thought, I'm so glad that even though the temperature is 13 below outside, it's like a toasty 65 in here, and that I have a nice comfy place that I can go and do some yoga in my living room. And so you can give yourself a completely different thought. And that is the best self-care in the world, giving yourself the thoughts that are going to help you achieve your goals. So if you think the thought that I'm so grateful that it's 65 in my house, even though it's 13 degrees outside and I can go do yoga, you're going to feel that coziness and it's going to help you to get up and go do your yoga. And if you just think, oh, it's 13 below, I wish I could just stay in my bed, then you're going to feel lazy and tired and sleepy, and you're just going to keep sleeping instead of go do your yoga. So those things don't take time, they just take practice.
And you know, when I first read that sentence or heard that sentence, essential self, I'm going to say it again just for people, essential self-care takes focus, attention, and creativity, but it doesn't take time. You know, I'm going to be honest, that sounded intimidating to me. I was like, what does that mean? Or like, how does it not take time? If you don't have time, like, how do you, because I would have thought, oh, you need to make time. But I think it goes back to you saying it takes intention, because if I have intention, the schedule seems to open it up, because TV isn't going to happen to me. I'm going to set intention for TV, and that might open. If I limit and say I'm only going to watch 30 minutes or 1 hour or whatever it is, that might open up another hour of the day to me where I'm like, well, what do I do now? I'm usually watching TV for 3 hours. And so I think that that's interesting, that it really, the intention goes back to that. I mean, I feel like that's the takeaway here from this entire conversation is intention, intention, intention.
Yes. And so for some of the more physical things, like
there's real life, people. There's real life. We'll give her just a minute. Okay, you're on mute. There you go.
Yeah, sorry. So I was, having to coordinate some things going on with for my husband. So where were we? Oh yeah. So if you really do want to create healthier meals for yourself, that takes time, period. But you can factor in the time that it's going to take to eat a not healthy meal, and the time that it's going to take you to maybe sit on the toilet a little longer because you're stuck, and the time that it's going to take you to maybe eventually have to go to the doctor, and the time that it's going to take you to, you can think of all kinds of things that are going to take extra time in your life because you didn't intentionally make the time right now to prepare a healthy meal. So intention requires that we have a vision. It requires that we have a dream for our lives, that we don't just go from day to day and let life happen to us, that we create the life that we deserve. Absolutely. And we can only do that by being intentional. And then we find out that treating ourselves great does not take any more time in the long run, and even sometimes in the short run, than treating ourselves like crap.
Okay, so Jill, I have one last question before we wrap it up today. What is, actually, I'm going to make that two. What is self-care not?
Self-care is not driving yourself to do all the things that you think it should look like. So like I have seen so many self-care articles written, and they have these lists of things that one might do to practice good self-care. If any of those look fabulous to you, pick one and begin to, Daniel, can you handle this? I am so sorry. I had no idea we were going to have all this action going on in here. And it's partly my self-care journey for my husband. So where was I?
So we were figuring out what self-care is not. It's not doing all the things we shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah. So those lists are just things that you can just pick one or pick two if you want to, but they're not lists of things you need to do. So don't do any of them. Pick your own. Like Rebecca said, maybe dance in the kitchen for some exercise. And if that's all you do, that's good self-care for the whole year, guess how much better you're going to feel at the end of that year than if you tried all the other things and try to make yourself do all of these things. And also self-care is not the buffering. So hold on just a second. Okay, so the self-care is also not allowing yourself to slide into neglect, self-neglect. Yeah, buffering is just another form of self-neglect. It is the opposite of self-care. So don't convince yourself that something that you do for some relief or some comfort is self-care. It is not self-care if the after effect is negative.
Right.
So you have positive and negative. You need to keep your life balanced with positive and negative. You really don't need anything negative, but negative stuff is going to happen. There is so much noise in my house right now. I'm so sorry. But
and that, I think what you just said about weighing the positive and negative, I think that was really helpful to know when is sitting down and watching some TV or playing a video game positive and when is it negative? Like what is too much and what is just enough to give yourself a chance to rest or breathe or pace yourself or, you know, an escape or what have you. I think those are really, really good feedback. And here's my very last question, at least maybe. If you could send out one statement, one thing that you wanted everyone to know, that you could just like reprogram the world or our culture and change, what is that thing that you wish everyone knew?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about, and I will try to be brief. And that is, you know how I said you should be your own best friend? Our lives are eternal. So there is a beginning and an end, and I believe that our lives are eternal. Like they don't even end, and there never was a beginning. Like we were always intelligences, and then God created our spirits, and then we were born on earth, and then there's a life after death. And that's just my belief, but you can believe in it however you want. My dad believes in reincarnation, so he believes that we started as little amoebas, and then we were a good little amoeba, so we became a good little plant, and then we were a good plant, and then we get a chance to be in a human body, and even then sometimes we still have some more growing to do, so when we die we get to be in another human body, and that's really fun to learn about. And whatever your belief is, if you have the understanding or the feeling or the belief that you are eternal, then you can look at your past self and have so much more compassion for your past self. Look at your past self and just know that you did your level best and you did great and you got yourself to where you are now. All of the mistakes that you made and all the wonderful things that you did and all of the thoughts that you had and all of the people that you love, they are what got you where you are now. So put all the judgment of mistakes you made in the past. You're supposed to make mistakes. Mistakes are there for us to learn and grow and to develop into the people we're going to be. So don't have regret and just love yourself for who you were. and be your best friend to the person you're going to be in 10 years. Whoever you're going to be in 10 years is going to just thank you with all kinds of love and gushiness for you doing the best you can with taking care of yourself right now. And if you can be best friends with your past self and your future self, then you will have so much empowerment you will feel so aligned with taking the best care of yourself that you can right now, because you're grateful and you're excited and looking forward to your future self.
Awesome. So as we wrap up today, I just want to say, Jill, thank you again. I think this has just been a lot of really good aha moments, a lot of really good takeaways. I think it's going to be so helpful, people digging in a little bit deeper. And just as a reminder, I work with the autoimmune and neurological, the environmental illnesses such as chronic inflammatory response syndrome, thyroid, cognitive decline, those kind of things. Though that's what I do, but I want to really remind people that if self-care is going to be a big hitter for you, you're not ready for the whole journey, you're not ready for like all that kind of stuff where you need to dig in deeper on that one, you think that's going to be a big hitter and something that you're ready for. Jill, can you tell us a little bit more about how those watching can learn more or take action so that they can stop pouring from them up and really help them develop their own self-care, personal self-care journey, and help gain some support on developing that and understanding, how to implement that and helping them be successful sooner than they could be on their own?
Yeah, I have a life coach, and I think everybody needs a life coach. My life coach made all the world of difference for me in how I perceive my caregiving efforts with my husband, who is a disabled veteran, and all of his emotional stuff. I used to think that he didn't deserve this, that my kids deserved better, that I couldn't do all this. And I had all of these thoughts going in my head, circling around all the time, that were creating a lot of negative action for me and a lot of negative emotions. And so I got negative results. And so I just think that, you should find yourself a life coach, get some referrals, ask people who they know, who's a good life coach. Get yourself a life coach, because you can't see your brain on your own. And some people can help you see your brain, but most people will just jump in the ditch with you. Because they love you and they want to support you, and they say, oh yeah, that was so mean, that thing that he did, and blah blah blah. And a life coach is going to hold some space and let you have the emotions that you're going to have and help you to work through them without being part of the problem. And so I just think everybody needs a life coach.
And if somebody would like to connect with you, maybe they need some extra help developing their self-care, and they think, what, Jill, you really resonate with me. How can they get in touch with you to maybe sit down and see if that would be a good fit?
Well, you are also welcome to just email me, and that's jill@jillarmijo.com. So that's pretty simple too. And I'll spell the last name for you again. It's Armijo. So you can either go to my website, because there's ways to email me on there, and that's just jillarmijo.com, or you can email me at jill@jillarmijo.com.
Awesome. And I can honestly say that if anybody is out there and self-care is where you want to focus your healing journey right now, Jill would be a great person to help you really develop that. It's a really big hitter. And, if somebody isn't willing to take on the whole journey and just needs to focus on one part of the journey because it's less overwhelming, and that's just the pace that they're at, I definitely recommend that, contact Jill, sit down, she'll have a conversation with you and see if you're a good fit, and you guys can just decide how to move forward from there. Jill, thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate that. If you are watching this on YouTube, please click subscribe and like down below. And I hope to see you guys on either or both of our Facebook groups, so you can get a bunch of different support and really help you really reach your goals regardless of what they are. Jill, do you have any last words that you'd like to tell everybody before we finish up today?
I would just like to say that Rebecca is amazing. She is so loving and so thorough. Oh my goodness, she has quite the practice going on, and get in touch with her if you have any needs for health coaching, and she will take good care of you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. You guys have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, and we will talk with you soon.